the strange thing, you got the news and you had a show booked.
Yeah.
You
I was in the middle of a tour.
You were in the middle of a tour.
Yeah.
And you said, yeah, I mean...
After decades of wild polka medleys and side-splitting parodies, Weird Al Yankovic has finally lifted the veil on the one mystery fans have begged him to confirm. And you won't believe what he's been hiding. In this jaw-dropping exposé, the Grammy-winning comedy legend cracks open his vault of secrets, revealing the truth behind the most ridiculous rumors swirling around his career. From that bizarre backstage handshake he refused to explain to the unbelievable inspiration for his chart-topping spoofs, Al pulls no punches. Whether you've been a die-hard fan since Eat It or you're just discovering his genius, this is the bombshell confession that will have everyone talking. Buckle up, because Weird Al is about to rewrite pop culture history. And we finally know what we all suspected. On October 23, 1959, in a peaceful Downey, California neighborhood, Alfred Yankovic came into this world. The working-class Yankovics were very protective of their only kid, Nick, and they lived frugally. Mary was an administrative assistant, and Nick was a manufacturing worker. Due to his father's warnings about the dangers of female health, young Alfred spent much of his youth indoors, unsupervised by other children. However, unlike other children, he was able to immerse himself in the strange and tranquil world of music and humor. Not only did he spend his childhood in relative isolation, but he also used that time to concoct an unusual and remarkable idea. The turning moment occurred when a door-to-door salesman offering music instruction knocked on his door shortly before he turned 7 years old. Picking between guitar and accordion was easy, even though they weren't related. His parents' last name was Frankie Yankovic, and it was a factor in their decision to play the accordion. Everything started rolling after that one choice. Since he was alone and had lots of time on his hands, Al practiced non-stop. After 3 years of instruction, he decided to teach himself. After hearing Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, he couldn't stop thinking about it. It was an accordion tune that he played endlessly. He found his voice on that peculiar instrument, immersed in his peculiar little universe. He skipped a grade after starting school early. Since he was the smallest, most socially awkward, and least coordinated student in the class, he was always the youngest. He was just 16 years old when he enrolled in college. At Cal Poly, he resided in room 43G in Sierra Madre Tower. He avoided going naked to the restroom in favor of carrying his clothing in a towel, which made him seem strange to his other students. They once made a mockery of taking them, and he had to use a shower curtain to encase himself until they returned. People began to mock him by dubbing him Weird Al, but Al surprised everyone by actually enjoying the nickname. He wasn't the typical high school party animal or jock. Instead, he was the class valedictorian, a gifted public speaker, and the brains behind the Volcano Worshippers, a made-up group he started for the sole purpose of getting his photo taken for the yearbook. As a member of the yearbook team, he contributed insightful captions. He made an effort to be unique rather than merely standing out. He enrolled to Cal Poly to study architecture after graduating at 16 years of age. Although it was a sensible and secure course of action, he felt the need to pursue something else. In architecture school, Al was already a standout. The night before a big deadline, he was caught by one of his teachers playing the accordion into a urinal. It became clear that he had completed the task beforehand. As usual, he was only occupied with his own thoughts. His focus was elsewhere, on humor, music, and that odd term everyone kept referring to him, even if he had respectable grades. He worked as a disc jockey for the college radio station KCPR during his second year. It was a great fit. He became known as Weird Al while he was on television. Rather of avoiding it, he used it as a foundation. No one else ventured to perform the strange songs and comedic routines that he did on his performances. He purposefully became eccentric, made jokes, and challenged limits. Everything was in disarray, but that was just him. Even though he later denied the rumor, others still claim he allegedly flushed a toilet while live on television. The fact that this little collegiate radio booth played a significant role in his personal growth was not a fiction. As a result, Al's debut single, Take Me Down, was produced in 1978 for a charity album in his hometown. It wasn't much, but it got things rolling. The song's lyrics made fun of San Luis Obispo landmarks. It had his accordion and was odd, humorous, and charming. It was beginning to seem like that strange little instrument may be something people would really like listening to. However, he was unprepared for what followed. A men's restroom was the starting point. Alfred Yankovic, a college DJ at California Polytechnic State University, was 19 years old and stood alone in a tiled toilet with only his accordion, a rudimentary tape recorder, and an eccentric notion. He made use of the area as his recording studio due to its impeccable echo. In it, he penned a humorous take on the Knack's My Bologna, with an emphasis on food, and submitted it to Dr. Demento, a comic radio show. A tremendous response ensued. It was the most popular song of the year, drawing more attention than nearly everything else. After that, the turning point arrived. At Yankovic's college, the Knack came to play. He encountered Doug Fieger, the band's main vocalist, while anxiously waiting backstage. The executive at Capitol Records heard Fieger's suggestion, and instead of dismissing him, they paid him $500 and published the song on Christmas Day, 1979. In just 1 month after its release, My Bologna sold 10,000 copies. It was the beginning of a long and surprising career. However, following that, things got more difficult. Even though Dr. Demento's program had more tracks airing by 1982, most record labels still considered him a joke. For fear of being labeled as one-hit wonders, they avoided parody tunes. They thought I'd have one hit and disappear, Yankovic reflected afterwards, but he refused to give up. An energetic, quirky, and infectious new parody of Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll titled I Love Rocky Road was his latest recording. It was made much better with the assistance of guitar superstar Rick Derringer. Jay Levy, the manager, forwarded the song to a radio station in Los Angeles. The reaction was instantaneous. The audience just couldn't get enough. Because to that radio play, one man, Tad Dow of Rock and Roll Records, was able to get a legitimate deal for Yankovic from Scotti Brothers. He had formally begun recording his debut album. His first album was released in 1983, along with the re-recorded version of My Bologna, a parody of Mickey titled Ricky, about I Love Lucy, and the rough and hilarious Another One Rides the Bus. The album was jam-packed with energy, and Yankovic, with the help of Dr. Demento, went on a tour across the Midwest and East Coast, performing live for fans who actually came to see him. His presentations were eccentric, entertaining, and hilarious because these were his people. The album cover was reminiscent of Mad Magazine, which was Yankovic's desired aesthetic, and his video for Ricky was shown on MTV, a relatively new channel at the time. He felt confident enough to leave his work in a mailroom and devote himself fully to music after that minor accomplishment. But there were a few bumps along the way. He and his band were scheduled to play for the new wave band Missing Persons one evening in 1982. What should have been a major breakthrough turned out to be a complete failure. Comedy tunes and an accordionist were not what the audience was hoping for. He endured 45 minutes of merciless booing, object throwing, and ridicule. Poor Yankovic was devastated. A child approached him as he trudged shamefully and wearily made his way to his vehicle. "Who is this? Weird Al Yankovic?" he inquired. "Yes, I am," Al said with a smile. The child met his gaze and spoke the words, "You suck." That was the exact moment that might have put a stop to it all, but it didn't. He learned the hard way that performing for the uninitiated is a waste of time. He subsequently made it a point to only perform for his legion of devoted followers who came to his shows with the express purpose of laughing at his corny lyrics and parodies. He spent the remainder of his career adapting to that choice. Weird Al Yankovic didn't get famous by being safe. He became famous by being eccentric, fearless, and totally unlike anything else that the music industry had experienced up until that point in the 1980s. On December 13, 1983, Al recorded Eat It, a humorous spoof of Michael Jackson's Beat It. When it was released in February 1984, nobody anticipated its enormous success. But it did. In America, it peaked at number 12. But in Australia, it topped the charts, even surpassing Michael Jackson. Every shot in the music video was a carbon copy of the original, and Al made fun of the fact that he looked just like Michael Jackson to say it worked. In secret, he had contacted Jackson directly to seek approval. Yes, Jackson agreed, finding the concept humorous. Eat It was Al's biggest success in the United States for more than 20 years, and that green light helped him earn his first Grammy. Big, curly hair, flashy Hawaiian shirts, and, of course, the accordion, all of which became integral parts of his performance style, also became significant parts of the act. On to the next set, the culinary tunes. His record label coerced him into releasing the Food Album, a 1993 compilation of 10 songs all about food, because he composed so many. Fans went absolutely crazy over it, even though Al despised the idea and believed the label was just trying to make a buck. It was strange that it omitted Al's despised "Girls Just Want to Have Lunch," a song he had recorded only under pressure from his label. The food jokes, nevertheless, stayed with him. He phoned Kurt Cobain to inquire about a parody of "Smells Like Teen Spirit," but Cobain immediately responded, "It's not about food, is it?" Al assured me it wasn't. No one was able to resist that genuine offbeat charisma, not even the grunge icons. However, Al was engaged in more than simply musical composition. He was given free rein of the network by MTV on April 1, 1984, for a few hours. His music videos, fabricated interviews with celebrities, and other strange footage formed part of his ALTV show. There was a lot of goo, and it was addicting. Over the course of 2 decades, he produced 11 of these specials, which were staples in his album releases and early MTV viewers' must-see programming. They were short on airtime, but Al made up for it with something special. He became famous for his cult following because he integrated humor with music culture. Following the debacle of Polka Party, Weird Al required victory. When his 1988 album Even Worse was released on April 12th, it became an instant hit, and he finally found it. For 26 weeks, it remained at number 27 on the Billboard 200. It reached platinum in 1994 after only 3 months on the market. Weird Al's debut album to sell 1 million copies was this one. The song Fat, a cover of Michael Jackson's Bad, and its accompanying music video, which won a Grammy for Best Concept Music Video, were major contributors to the group's popularity. Weird Al went so far as to go on Family Double Dare in May of 1988 as a participant in order to promote the record. At long last, things were looking up, but that was short-lived. The 1989 film UHF was directed by Weird Al. The results from the test audiences were just as impressive as those from the initial RoboCop screenings, so things were looking good. Weird Al's UHF bombed at the box office that summer, shattering his hopes that he may finally break into film. Not only did it face stiff competition from blockbuster smashes like Batman, Ghostbusters II, Lethal Weapon 2, and Indiana Jones, and The Last Crusade, but reviews were also rather negative. That was a complete flop. It was removed from cinemas at the conclusion of July. Weird Al was deeply affected by UHF's failure. From 1989 until 1992, he had a tough time. That was the lowest point of his artistic career, he said. Orion Pictures had considered him the new Woody Allen, but once the film tanked, no one would answer his calls, and his industry connections shied away from him as if he were sick. No one wanted to look Weird Al in the eye, as he explained later on. He doubted his ability to continue. Even though he wasn't clinically depressed, he described the sensation as awful. He wallowed in self-pity for a while, attempting to decide if he belonged in the comedy or music industries. He severed ties with producer Rick Derringer, another major move he took during this gloomy period. His longtime collaborator and producer Derringer was instrumental in the creation of his first 5 studio albums. They won Grammys and helped develop Weird Al's sound in their time working together. It wasn't until UHF that Weird Al understood he needed to rein it in a bit. He aspired to be a music producer. In order to thrive, he had to transform. During the early 1990s, the music industry was undergoing rapid changes, and Weird Al was well aware that he needed to adapt. With only one phone call, he began his remarkable return. To spoof Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit," Weird Al decided to phone Kurt Cobain personally when the band was performing on Saturday Night Live, since he couldn't go via official channels. Cobain immediately agreed, since he adored the idea. Released in 1992, "Smells Like Nirvana" was a game-changer. It was more than simply a humorous tune. It aptly portrayed the occasion. Rather than being nasty, it made a loving joke about how difficult it was for anyone to grasp Kurt Cobain's songs. Some of the original cheerleaders from Nirvana's video were even in the video. Strange Al had gone completely insane again. It ended the darkest slump of his life, and the album it was on was a smash. For Weird Al, the 90s were his most fruitful decade. His subsequent albums, such as 1993's Alapalooza and 1996's Bad Hair Day, maintained his momentum. Bad Hair Day was a smashing success, debuting at number 14 on the Billboard charts. It contained the spoof Amish Paradise, which was based on Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise. Many listeners were introduced to the music of the 90s by just perusing the album notes, and the album quickly became an icon in popular culture. In 1999, Running with Scissors released a collection of songs that included The Saga Begins, a comical take on Star Wars, and It's All About the Pentiums, a jab at computer nerds. In the US alone, Weird Al's albums from the 90s sold over 4.5 million copies. One of their singles, Bad Hair Day, even achieved double platinum status. Another notable aspect of Weird Al's career was his approach to legally handling parodies. Even though he didn't have to, he always sought for permission to create them out of respect. While some musicians, like Kurt Cobain, loved being mocked, others, like Prince, flat out refused. Despite having to sacrifice excellent content, Weird Al respected their demands. Even style parodies, in which he simply imitated a band's sound without plagiarizing their lyrics, were beyond his capabilities. Staying out of trouble while maintaining positive ties in the music industry was a brilliant move. However, things weren't always easy. The 1996 version of Amish Paradise had Coolio in an angry rage because, according to him, he hadn't given permission, even though the producer did. During interviews, Coolio severely criticized Weird Al, and he even made fun of him in a song. They ended their long-running quarrel and made up. They had their first conversation in 2006 while both were on stage at the Consumer Electronics Show. Coolio acknowledged that he had reacted too strongly and even made a joke about how he could laugh at himself if Michael Jackson could. A handwritten apology and a portion of the earnings had been delivered to him by Weird Al some years ago. Despite his silence, Coolio took the peace offering. No matter what happened, Weird Al remained true to himself. He managed to make people laugh without putting others down, remained genuine and hilarious no matter what happened in the world, and paid tribute to the artists he mocked. The 1992 gift of Diet for a New America by a friend marked a watershed moment in Weird Al Yankovic's life. In the past, Al had begun reducing his consumption of red meat, but the book transformed his perspective on eating. It addressed more than only health. It also touched on animals and the broader global implications. After making the transition, Al discovered he didn't miss meat at all, something he had previously thought was impossible during Thanksgiving. Also, he gave full-on veganism a shot, but he subsequently made fun of the fact that he occasionally ate dairy, claiming he had to surrender his hardcore vegan card. Being a vegetarian while touring in the early 90s was no picnic either. He'd have to settle for applesauce or toast at truck stops. But that was then. These days, he can find vegetarian options practically anywhere. Despite these changes in his private life, Al never made a public spectacle of it. He maintained a wall between his eating habits and his comedy and music careers, never letting his followers in on the secret. Al chose to alter yet another aspect of his appearance, his vision, just a short time afterward. He had LASIK surgery at the Jules Stein Eye Institute at UCLA on January 23, 1998. The procedure was relatively new at the time. Even with his nose practically touching the largest letter on an eye chart, his vision was so poor that he couldn't read it. Instead of footing the bill, Al consented to have the operation televised. It was classic Al, making light of a potentially terrifying situation. After undergoing the procedure himself, Dr. Robert Maloney described how lasers will restructure Al's cornea, correcting his severe nearsightedness. Afterwards, Al finally threw off his heavy spectacles. In 1999, with the release of Running with Scissors, he seemed completely different, sporting long hair and a lack of a mustache. Later, he made light of the situation by stating, "If Madonna could reinvent herself every 15 minutes, I figured I deserved one change every 20 years." His appearance was shifting, but something much more significant was transpiring in his private life. Suzanne Krajewski and him fell in love over the phone after chatting for a time. They never even met in person, thanks to a mutual acquaintance. From their discussions alone, Al confessed he had feelings for her. He made a joke about Suzanne being able to see his Behind the Music special on VH1 when she wanted to know about his life. They were both certain that this was the one, even though neither of them had ever tied the knot before. They were blessed with a daughter, Nina, 2 years after their 2001 wedding. As a joke, Al will say things like, "I spent my own childhood glued to the TV. Where did we go?" when he expresses his astonishment at her affinity for the outdoors and nature. He was obviously much more appreciative of the life he had created after becoming a father. Weird Al Yankovic's life took a dramatic turn on April 9, 2004. On that fateful day, the bodies of Nick Yankovic and Mary Yankovic were discovered at their California residence. Carbon monoxide seeped into the home when they started a fire, but failed to open the chimney. When concerned relatives heard nothing from them for a while, they tracked them down. A horrible accident occurred. Despite his sadness, Al shocked everyone by continuing the tour and even performing a few days after the loss. Speaking to his admirers, he said, "Being on stage was helping me cope." While performing in front of enthusiastic audiences may not have alleviated his suffering entirely, it did provide a temporary respite from his perpetual downpour. It demonstrated his inner fortitude and his firm belief that music had the power to heal, not just for his audience, but for himself as well. Another peculiar aspect of Al's life that followers adore discussing is his peculiar relationship with the number 27. In the early 1990s, it all began when Al's drummer casually mentioned, Al just thought 27 was a funny number. Fans quickly noted that the number kept appearing in his music. He was awarded trailer number 27 at a fair. He joked about watching movies 27 times in one song, and he even sung about drinking beer 27 times. Album covers, registration plates, and even cameos in his movies included the number. Al came clean later on how he purposefully began sneaking it into his work once he seen how thrilled his followers were over it. An amusing little mystery that only served to deepen his admirers' affection for him evolved from a jest. Amazing things also happen in Al's journey with his band. Steve J., John Bermuda Schwartz, Jim Chemo West, and Ruben Valtierra were loyal to him for decades, even though they were all in a profession where relationships are always ebbing and flowing. These guys weren't filler, they were superstars. Jim mastered Hawaiian guitar. John meticulously documented Al's career, which included many appearances as a Simpsons cartoon, while Ruben performed with legendary artists like Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin before joining Al, all while Steve composed music for television shows and released albums of his own. Their shared appreciation for the music and Al's meticulous attention to detail kept them together. It wasn't simply a joke. They could tell that each word and tone counted. Al didn't remain modest, even though he began by composing humorous tunes. More than any other comedian in history, he sold over 12 million CDs. He recorded over 150 songs and performed at thousands of concerts. 4 of his albums were certified gold, while 6 were platinum. After 1996's Bad Hair Day, which sold over 2 million copies, and later's Running with Scissors, which sold even more, his career took off. In the process, he received 16 nominations and 5 Grammy Awards. His 2014 album, Mandatory Fun, achieved the unheard-of feat of debuting at the top of the Billboard album rankings. Not only was it his first album to reach the top spot, but it was also the first comedy album to do so since the 1960s. He was so successful that his song Word Crimes reached the top 40. It proved that Al could continue to amaze people even after 40 years. That wasn't all Al did. Another crazy tour was promised for 2021 by him, but this time it would be different. No elaborate costumes, no giant screens, and no loud spoof songs. On the contrary, he yearned for intimate performances where he could showcase his original compositions, the ones that were rarely heard on the radio. A Vanity Tour that is both ridiculously self-indulgent and badly advised was his moniker. He performed over 133 concerts, including one at New York's Carnegie Hall. It was all about music and connection, not jokes or flashy lights, and Al adored it. For him, it was the pinnacle of stage enjoyment. Hollywood adapted his life story for the big screen in 2022, but true to form, the film was a spoof of his own life replete with fantastical anecdotes. The actor known for his portrayal of Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, also acted as Al. The film poked fun at every serious biography that has ever been made. It wasn't just a comedy. It had a successful debut at the Toronto Film Festival. It was praised by Rotten Tomatoes and deemed amusing by the New York Times. The Emmy Awards even gave it some love with nominations and victories. It proved that Al couldn't help but make everyone laugh, even while he was narrating his own story. The greatest influence Al had was not on the entertainment industry per such, but on the very definition of humor. Not content to merely release an album in 2014, he took it a step further by releasing 8 music videos across various platforms in only 8 days, causing his songs to become viral before the term "going viral" was even coined. He smiled and stated that Beyoncé was the one who was trying to mimic his surprise album strategy when media accused him of doing the same. He continued to be popular with younger generations thanks to his astute grasp of how the internet functioned. In addition to demonstrating that parody could be a legitimate occupation, he also shown that humorous songs may have practical applications, because to him, comedic music has evolved into an integral aspect of popular culture.